Hey everybody, welcome back into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. This is the practice report. Is brought to you by Byers Auto. A little bit of a skeleton crew in here. We're going to make the best of it.
Got the replacements, huh?
Hey, Tim May and Zack Carpenter hanging out with me. I'm Austin Ward. It's the off date. Spencer Holbrook getting a little tweak. Got to get healthy and refreshed. And maybe
it's an idle week for a lot of people, right?
He's getting a tweak between cheek and gum.
And we'll have Berm back next week when he gets through his situation. And everybody, you rest, recharge a little bit. Haskell Garrett trying to get healthy. Kerry Coombs continuing to light a fire under the rest of the Buckeyes. And then they'll have a little bit of a lighter weekend for them as practice Tuesday, practice Wednesday, early practice Thursday, and then a little bit of an off date, kick their feet up a little bit. And pretty normal stuff there, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what I wanted to mention is my name is back to being Zack Carpenter this time for Lettermen Row.
We did get that. We got that. That's a mid-season adjustment. Jerry Emig, he came over and asked me what Nick's last name was, and I said, well, let's start with Zach. Let's get that
let's
right.
Get the first
so
part
we're going
right.
to make improvements as we go along, and you're rounding into form.
Right. So that was obviously the biggest takeaway for me for this practice report.
That's key.
The other is we talked about the health of guys like Tyreke Smith, Cam Brown, Thayer Munford, just the extra week, how it can help them. Bobby Carpenter on Lettermen Live talked yesterday about how even with a guy like C.J. Stroud, yes, he's fully healthy, but that extra week in the middle of the season could really pay off for him. Yeah. So I think we're going to see that too.
Yeah, and you want to see Haskell Garrett return to form. They don't want to push it, I don't think, but the bottom line is a lot of people left that game wondering what his prognosis was long term. I understand this off week came at a great time for him. It looked like a knee kind of situation he's probably dealing with, or some kind of lower leg thing, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, that guy is sort of the pulse, for one of another term, of that defense right now, in my opinion, and to get him back close to 100% would be huge.
Yeah, I don't expect Haskell Garrett will be, as you said, pushed at all, trying to get that leg healthy. He'd been dealing with that a little bit, obviously able to play through it in the weeks leading up to that and just pushed over the edge a little bit against Maryland. The word that they used there was hopeful for next week.
Yeah.
So that's obviously not definite, but Ryan Day doesn't give specifics about injury information, and generally anyway. The same was applied to Cam Brown. That was obviously an upper body situation, near inside the helmet perhaps.
Yeah, above the shoulders.
Above the
situation.
Shoulders.
Which narrows it down.
A little bit woozy, as I mentioned after talking to him after the game, and I really feel bad for Cameron Brown. Just one thing after the other with this guy. We've seen when he's healthy what he can do to elevate the Ohio State defensive cornerback, and really that speed, athleticism. He's a special athlete.
Yeah.
And would really help Ohio State, but it's just go from the Achilles to then a knee setback in training camp early in the season, and now this. So I don't expect that he will practice this week as he goes through some of that upper body evaluation into next week.
And it's funny how Seven Banks finally starting to get fully healthy. Cam Brown then suffers the injury. It's like, canceling each other out type of deal.
Yeah, an even Stevens situation. And then Tyreke Smith, we saw him go through pregame warm-ups on Saturday. He was a game-time decision, and it looked like he was getting ready to go. Didn't wind up getting the full nod to go through that game against Maryland. But certainly now, after 3 weeks and then an off week, you would think that veteran defensive end will be back in the mix. So Ohio State's got a bunch of these young guys reps, and then you're going to add in potentially a healthy Haskell Garrett, Cam Brown, Tyreke Smith, Thayer Munford getting a week for his foot. I mean, this team should come back even stronger.
Yeah. There might not be someone who needs that extra week off more than Tyreke Smith. I mean, we're waiting for that explosion from him to really bring another dynamic to the pass rush. So I don't know if we're thinking that after this week, maybe he could come back with a little bit of a vengeance and then just add, like you said, depth to that unit that's bringing on the young guys. I know one thing,
I would never want to go on a jungle trip with Tyreke Smith because he is about as snake bit as you get. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a competition between he and Cam Brown, unfortunately.
Exactly. I mean, it's crazy, and everybody's seen that flash from him. And like you just pointed out, I mean, the cavalry could be coming over the hill for Ohio State in the form of, we talked about it on my podcast, in the form of these upperclassmen. But is it going to stumble coming down the hill? I mean, that's what you always got to worry about the cavalry. But it is amazing how they could get a real influx of help down the stretch with those kind of guys.
Well, and I think that maybe it's not worth a reminder. Maybe it is that the Tyreke Smith that played against Cincinnati was the version that was promised, and then he had the COVID positive test, couldn't play in the national championship game. The first couple of weeks, Ohio State didn't have the pass rush that they were expecting. He's not obviously solely to blame for
Yeah,
that.
you said Cincinnati, you meant Clemson. Yeah.
Oh, Clemson.
They
I'm
both
sorry.
start with a C.
They very close. Cincinnati on the brain. With a
Cincinnati
big-
might have been better in that game than Clemson was,
Well,
but go ahead.
I'm glad you two are here to correct me in real time, because that's
I was just
obviously
going to let you
that's
roll and bury
That's
yourself.
a pretty big difference. No, I am glad that we got that straightened out against Clemson.
Yeah.
The version
Yeah.
that was promised, that probably didn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, he hasn't found that form. Neither really has Zach Harrison, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste are starting to show signs of that. But the point is, once you get him ready to go, and the clock is ticking, the window is shrinking for him to prove that he can be the first-round pick that he's always wanted to be. So get a clean bill of health and go get
But
it.
isn't it amazing how good he is when he's healthy? I mean, that's what sticks out to me about him. It's like, but man, just it's kind of like Jadeveon Clowney on the pro level. I mean, he gets going and then boom, he gets banged up and stuff. But
Wasn't his first career sack against Cincinnati? Maybe that's right.
yeah, I think it's
There's something working
Yeah.
in your brain right now. I can't
Yeah.
put my finger on it. But
That's maybe what it was.
you talk about those guys. Me and Berm, obviously, we cover it from the recruiting side, and I know not everyone out there follows recruiting as closely as me and him do, but originally Ohio State was searching to sign 5 defensive linemen in the 2022 class. And then after the first 6-7 weeks of the season, it's like, all right, well, maybe that number needs to be 3 because guys like Tyreke Smith and Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Zach Harrison haven't had that breakout necessarily that we were expecting. So this is, like you said, it's time. It's time, like you said, for once he gets healthy. He should be fully healthy once he gets back. You expect that to kind of be like the last go round.
And not only that, but with the NIL, name, image, and likeness situation, if you don't get drafted real high, you might be able to make as much money your next year in college as you might make as a rookie making the minimums in the NFL. I mean, there's all kinds of dynamics involved here.
You can definitely close the gap a little bit.
Yes, you can.
And speaking of that defense and improvement down the stretch, Kerry Coombs, if you have not yet watched I called it a sermon. It was as passionate a speech as you'll ever see in front of the media in that team room. Obviously, that's pretty common for the players to hear that, but you see why Kerry Coombs is talked about the way he is by the rest of the coaching staff, by the Buckeyes themselves, why he was given a game ball on Saturday. He went through, Tim, you've known him as long as I have or longer, so I'll start with you here, but that's a glimpse at who Kerry Coombs is. He was under fire a month ago, with good reason.
Yeah.
Ohio State had to fix things on defense, and he was aware of that. They made an adjustment. It was not easy, and there's certainly an opportunity to want to sabotage the rest of the things or bring people down, or, as he said, kick the can to somebody else or whatever else. But he's accepted his role, not thrilled about it, but trying to find any way that he can to continue to help Ohio State for the rest of the season. And it was about as impressive as you're going to hear, I think.
Number one, everybody works for somebody. That's what you find out, But number two, I got goosebumps while he was talking there for a while, just because this is a guy who always speaks from his heart. I mean, at least it feels like it. And for him to lay it out, including later in the day, for him to lay out, that when the big change came down after the Oregon game, there was that one morning when I woke up and went, wait a minute, things have changed here. I really want to be a part of this, but he quickly snapped out of it because, like he talked about, you're always talking to these players all the time about dealing with adversity, rolling with the punches. If you get sent down to second team, that doesn't mean the day is over for you. The year is over for you. You jump back. He goes, if I don't come back with the same kind of attitude, I'm a hypocrite. Yeah. And he's exactly hit the nail on the head. And reminded me, I don't know why I did, but I'm sitting here thinking, when John Mackovic got hired at Texas from Illinois as the head coach, John Cooper, walking through the building, John Cooper called me and goes, Tim, what do you think about this John Mackovic hiring by Texas? I said, I think he's a nice piece of furniture, but he's going to be in the wrong living room. And he laughed, and I go, but sometimes the jobs just don't mesh with what you bring to the table, at least at that moment in time. And Ryan Day acted quickly to get some things figured out. And Kerry Coombs, who was once a head coach in high school, understands that dynamic. Doesn't mean you always agree with it, but you work for this guy. And like he said, he loves his boss, who is Ryan Day. And I just think it was really, we've been waiting for several weeks to talk to him. You and I both went up to him and talked to him briefly after he got the game ball on Saturday while he was picking out his pizzas. And he was as effervescent and as calm and cool a guy as we've always known, appreciated the thoughts and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know this has been tough for him. And to roll with that punch and then see this defense now making its climb up the hill, I think all of that's is refreshing.
And that's something that Zach has talked about as well, like how is Ohio State juggling this with the recruiting process and asking questions about who's doing what and what Matt Barnes is doing and why Kerry Coombs is upstairs and this, that, and the other. I think it's worth another reminder that somebody like Denzel Burke would not be at Ohio State were it not for Kerry Coombs. So he's going to continue building relationships. He's going to take that energy on to, I don't know, wherever he's going to be on Friday or wherever he was yesterday. Doesn't matter. He's not going to suddenly stop being a key component there.
It's that energy, too. I think that kind of shined through. I mean, you're talking about things it reminds you of. It reminded me that I was like watching Braveheart or Any Given Sunday or something. And it's just like this impassioned speech. And you could tell that he knew he was going to be asked and he knew exactly how he wanted to answer it. And, I mean, it came off as professional as you can. And he spent those 2 years in the NFL. I'm sure that before that, he probably would have answered something like that in the past in the fashion that he did. But I mean, it was as professional as you can expect from him. And I mean, he talks, we always talk about how Kerry Coombs bleeds scarlet and gray, like bleeds this program. And I think you saw that shine through today with some of the things he was saying. And what's very interesting to me is like you were mentioning when I asked Ryan Day about how things were going with Matt Barnes, Kerry Coombs dynamic, Kerry kind of reiterated that again today. He's not going to stop recruiting for this team. That's like that's just not in his blood to stop doing that. I think that's like that might be his favorite part of the job, other than like being in the athletic facilities with the current team. So I mean, you had a big visitor again, the recruiting side of it. Massive 5-star cornerback visitor this weekend, and AJ Harris. And I talked to him last night, and he's like, I love seeing Coach Coombs and like his family and just sort of the passion he has for this program. So it's not going to stop anytime soon, even if he does take a back seat. You know what I mean?
And none of this is meant to take the spotlight away from Matt Barnes, who has certainly earned it and done a great job calling the defense over the last 4 weeks. I think it's pretty clear that you can see a different level of aggression, some better, Tim, you've written and talked about the mix of coverages and the things that they're doing defensively.
Yeah.
You can see that having an impact. Al Washington, I'm not trying to solely put the focus on Kerry Coombs. It's an interesting story. That's why we're talking about it. But all of them have done a fantastic job. Larry Johnson, I think it was just assumed that the pass rush would eventually come around and get stronger, and it has. Obviously, none of this is completely done at this point. But Al Washington, I think you also have to say that unit has been one of the most improved, if not the most improved on the team. So all of them have had to accept a role that 4 weeks ago, or even 4 months ago, they wouldn't have been expecting. This thing has gone through a pretty significant change, and Kerry Coombs has had more of that change than anybody else.
Yeah, and real quick before I talk about that part, I want to say what really stood out to me about Kerry Coombs was he talked about moving to the press box, which is the antithesis of what he's all about. Like he says, it's all about hugging players coming off the field, looking in their eyes and things like that, but it's really opened his eyes to seeing the big picture. And I think he's given them good feedback on what he's seeing from the press box, et cetera, which is huge in a game. And because, bad information in, bad information out. I think they're getting good information from up top with him and the other coaches up there. With that said, man, I was just sitting there during this press conference today too, and I was thinking, we're looking at the defensive secondary and the kind of the changes it's gone through personnel-wise, but has there been more of a blender going on than what's been going on at linebacker with this team since the start of camp till now, losing 2 guys, et cetera, having guys get banged up, et cetera. Some guys not playing up maybe to where you thought they were going to play, and all of a sudden Steel Chambers stepping in, and he's looking like a very viable part of the linebacker group. I just think it's been a really curious experiment to watch. I mean, and it's still in process.
It's something I'm so happy you segued into Steel Chambers. That was like one of the cool takeaways. What did he say? Kerry Coombs said that Steel Chambers, he sees and he goes. Is that quote?
Yeah.
And I mean, watching Steel Chambers, his transformation from 4th string running back to he's in the running for the best linebacker on the team now by season's end. I mean, it's going to be him and Cody Simon are in that little race, I think. I mean, just watching him on
some things
on
are
film,
undeniable. Well, go ahead. Yeah.
He's aggressive, he's fast, he's instinctual, and he's a good form tackler.
Yeah.
He had like 3 or 4 tackles in the Maryland game where he stopped a guy like 2 or 3 yards short on a third down or on a crucial down. So I'm glad that he started mentioning him, give us a little bit more insight into what makes Steele.
Yeah, that's why I asked about. I'm gonna write about that later in the week, hopefully for Lettermen Row. But I'm just.
Well, I hope no one else.
Where else would you write it?
You have another blog.
Once
you
ask the question, of course, exactly. I mean, I may do a piece for Vogue, but I digress.
Got an ESPN contract. Now
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
Huh?
But I mean, that's what we're. Yeah, this is what's so interesting about this team. I think it's exciting, actually.
Yeah.
This team is changing right before your eyes, and if you dwell on Minnesota or the Oregon game defensively, and you just let that bother you, as a fan or an observer or a media member, you're missing the big picture. The big picture is changing right before your eyes. It's kind of like a kaleidoscope, and like Ryan Day even pointed out, they're still not settled exactly on who does what. Even Kerry Coombs pointed out, so rightfully so. Some of these guys are more suited for this role than this role and stuff. Now the key is to keep finding out, honing that deal, and personnel groupings are really big into that, and that's why this off week is really huge for them when it comes, because they're going to be going against a team in 2 weeks, whether Michael Penix Jr. is there or not, which sounds like he might not be for quarterback, but carved them up throwing the ball in the second half last year. It was one of the great exhibitions ever in Ohio Stadium by an opposing team, and they know these big tests are coming for them in the last half of the season. Not to mention the 3 teams in the top 10 they're going to be facing.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun second half of the season. As you can see, they're not trying to beat the off date. They're already getting ready for Indiana. 3 practices this week, then back to work on Sunday after a couple days off for Ohio State. That's the plan Ryan Day is trying to execute as the Buckeyes get ready to gear up to defend that Big Ten title for the 5th time. That's Tim May and Zack Carpenter. I'm Austin Ward. This has been the Practice Report. It is brought to you by Byers Auto. We'll spend more of the off day trying to tell the difference between some of the best teams in the country and get some facts better when we regroup next week ahead of full coverage of Ohio State and Indiana. Until then, have a great off day. See you next week.